Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett. Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's get down to business.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Well, I hope that you out there are indeed ready for an exciting evening of shenanigans. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC, because we've got a lot to get to this evening. The world has not slowed down too much heading into the Thanksgiving week. And we're going to start by talking a little bit about what is going on between Russia and Ukraine. Are things escalating? Are they de-escalating? Are we at the doors of World War III? And is it all going to end in nuclear fire? No, it's not. It's not. Even if there is, at some point, some type of ground slight escalation between Western European forces and the proxies of Russia, no. There is not going to be nuclear war. And the reason is because Putin wants the land of Ukraine for far more than just increasing the amount of real estate Russia owns all in all. Russia wants Ukraine's breadbasket. That is what Putin desires. So right off the top of the bat, everything's coming to nuclear war. No. Posturing with nuclear weapons and weakly so is not going to lead to war. However, what is occurring at the present time is basically with Trump heading into office, the world is getting ready for a United States that's strong on foreign policy again. Biden has been ridiculously weak, which kind of goes in form with the Barack Obama foreign policy in which Putin invaded Russian land the last time that Biden was in office as the vice president, now the president of the United States. So what the world is preparing for is Trump foreign policy, which is that if you touch us, if you touch our boats, or if you touch our friends, you won't be around anymore. That's foreign policy for Trump, number one. Number two is, if you don't pay your fair share, then I don't want anything to do with you, and maybe we'll stop giving you all of those taxpayer-funded goodies that the United States brings to you free of charge. No more free rides, per se, as Biden tried very quickly at the end of his term to cancel the Ukrainian debt to the American people. Foreign aid should come with debt strings attached. That's how that should work. So this brings us to some really dumb takes around the world about the future of the military. Now, I want to make this expressly and explicitly clear. I really like Elon Musk. I think that he is a brilliant engineer. I think that he has a ton to bring to the table regarding government efficiency. His take today yesterday on the future of the military extended into today, that the United States should maybe stop with the F-35 program, stop developing fighter jets because drones are the future in military, period. That's a bad take. And by the way, his kind of linchpin argument is that China released this video, and you can actually see, if you're watching the live stream on X or YouTube, there are these drones that are flying kind of synchronously, and it's like, wow, look at all of the amazing drone work. That's so many drones. Wow. And Russia's launching drones at Ukraine. And so therefore this must mean that, it's just, oh man, very, very super scary stuff. Look at those drones. Look at how they buzz around. I'm sorry. I enjoy telling you this, that drones are not, in fact, the ultimate future of warfare. They are not, because drones are subject to like 30 different kinds of jamming. The light spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum, it's a pretty big spectrum. We have different ways of screwing with all different kinds of variables when it comes to the electromagnetic spectrum. And no matter how well you build a drone, if an AI bot does not have communicative access to a larger network, it cannot function. There are no AI tools we've developed yet that are able to fit inside a fighter jet, for instance, and be predictive enough to be effective in a fighter jet, much less a large drone. It's very easy to jam internet access anywhere, anytime, anyhow. So, no, I'm sorry, that's not coming down the pike. It's a silly foreign policy take. Also, Russia's not like doing phenomenally at the moment. They're using North Korean troops who are so addicted to pornography that they can't even fight. This has been confirmed by both the Associated Press and Reuters, that North Korean troops that have been sent over to fight in the Russo-Ukraine war, because Russia's finally bleeding dry the one thing that Russia can do, which is throw men into the meat grinder in any war or conflict with reckless abandon. That North Korean troops, now exposed to the internet for the first time, are so busy in their trenches and shelled out huts having private time that they're not even combat effective because they're too busy watching pornography. So, well done there. And I also should mention that the Russian ruble is very, 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 very deep in hot water. The Russian ruble has plummeted in its holding power and its buying power, and it's not going to get any better because Russia has very little to anchor the ruble to. It doesn't have the kind of debt-based trade that the United States has to prop up its dollar. Its oil reserves are becoming less desirable as Europe is finally starting to get with the program, and especially as the United States is becoming more and more energy independent, and then expected under President-elect Trump is going to balloon in energy production. Russia has less and less to go on. So moving on from that, we can get to the tariffs and the title of tonight's show, which is that the president of Mexico has indeed caved to Donald Trump. So yesterday, Donald Trump released a statement that he would be, because of crime and fentanyl being trafficked across the border, as well as, human trafficking through Mexico and then through Canada with crime and drugs, also citing a major migrant caravan heading towards the U.S.-Mexican border, that as of January 20th, he would sign all of the necessary documents to charge both Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all products coming into the United States. And everyone lost their ever-loving minds. And the reason that everyone lost their ever-loving minds is because so many people decided that what they really needed to do at the moment was just consider the economic impacts of tariffs. So this was going to be some type of long-lasting economic policy, and it was just going to be the end. It was going to cripple the U.S. economy because avocados went up in price from Mexico. First of all, tariffs are not the single policy of the Trump administration, and they are not the end goal. Trump, and you can see this in his campaign that he's laid out very clearly, Trump uses tariffs for one of two things. Number one is a threat to get what he wants, because people not only want the United States as a group to buy from, people also in foreign countries want to sell their goods to the United States. And if goods are elastic enough, meaning that they're goods that Americans can do without and may not buy if they're more expensive, as is the case for avocados in Mexico, if Trump slaps a tariff on there and suddenly avocados from California are cheaper and Americans aren't buying Mexican avocados for a while, then that hurts Mexico more than it hurts the United States because they're not able to make those sales. So all of the people saying that tariffs don't hurt other countries, that's stupid. That's not how that works. For elastic goods, it actually does hurt the other country because Americans will not buy some of those goods. And we've seen this in the last 10 years as Americans have pulled away from some elastic goods from other countries. For example, Russian goods that were going through the turmoil of the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, what does this have to do with the Mexican president? As of today, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum hopped up in front of the camera and tried to look tough and did a very, very bad job of it. I'm not going to play the video because it's in Spanish, and, well, I speak Spanish. Most of our viewers don't. And so I will summarize what it is that she said. So, first of all, she said she was writing a letter to Trump. She said that very quickly. She said she'd be advocating for dialogue and cooperation. So, number one, she's scared. We gotta like dialogue this out quick before he throws this into... That's not the kind of rhetoric that comes from a person who's extremely confident in fighting against Trump in a tariff battle. Trump isn't even applying the tariff threat in this instance, by the way, to an economic trade deal condition with the United States and Mexico. It's not as though Mexico is not trading fairly with the U.S. That's not what Trump is concerned about. He's concerned about the high crime rate, the free access that the Sinaloa cartel has with the southern border and well into the United States. And then he's concerned about fentanyl pouring across the border through not just Sinaloa, but also through Chinese-run operatives. And so this puts the Mexican president in a really rough position because Sheinbaum understands that the cartel basically runs the Mexican government. So what does she do? Well, then she says, okay, well, we're going to try to stop migrant caravans going up to the border. And then she actually doubles down, or I should say escalates her own position in her own statement, saying that she is going to stop migrants from ever reaching the southern U.S. border. So Trump's not even in office yet, and he's already got what he wants. Trump made the threat, tariffs, and it's fine. I don't want migrants coming up to the border. Sheinbaum says, oh, well, that's too bad. Trump says, okay, how about a 25% tariff on everything? Suddenly Sheinbaum's like, well, we're going to do everything we can, but we're going to need the U.S. to do some things as well. And then you have Tom Homan, Trump's appointed border czar, who has no problem putting anyone in the United States in a left-wing position of power in hot federal water if they decide to get in the place of federal statutes. So that was just a very beautiful thing to see. Here's Tom Homan being just one of the most incredible people Trump has ever tried putting into power.
Tom, you heard this mayor out there in Colorado. I want to get your reaction to it, and I want you to be clear about who has jurisdiction, the federal government or state and local governments. And if you're a sanctuary state or city, are you breaking the law?
You're absolutely breaking law. All you have to do is look at Arizona versus U.S. You'll see these breaking the law. But look, me and the Denver mayor, we agree on one thing. He's willing to go to jail. I'm willing to put him in jail.
Yep. Fantastic. So in case you were wondering about how that all was going to shake out, correct. By the way, Trudeau also came out in front of everyone today and also said that he is talking to Donald Trump because he's terrified. Donald Trump is putting Americans first, and that's what Americans voted for. The media does not like that, and that's what we're going to talk about next here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. Be right back in just a second.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Just a curbside prophet with my hand in my pocket.
I know that one of the more popular segments on the show, just to be honest with you, it's become one of my favorite segments, is the Quick News Roundup. There's so much news to dive into. I don't get enough time to talk about not just the news itself, but also the Republicans pounce portion of the news, which I'm talking about the legacy media flipping out over some of the most mundane things. First of all, Elon Musk, and I again, in the first segment, brilliant engineer, what he has done for free speech in purchasing Twitter and turning it into X was one of the key facets in winning the 2024 presidential election for Donald Trump. That was huge. And one of the reasons that it was huge is because the federal government had previously worked with social media companies to censor stories that they did not like. And this is not just admitted or I should say dredged up in the Twitter files by Matt Taibbi and associates, but also by Mark Zuckerberg. Openly, he's like, yeah, the feds would reach out to us at Instagram and Facebook, and they would tell us what we could and couldn't post about COVID and what we could and couldn't post about the Hunter Biden laptop story, etc. And so the mainstream media, instead of actually kind of learning with the times, kind of changing things up, trying to actually give people straight and unbiased news and in a format that made a lot of sense, they had really stuck to their guns. And now they're suffering from buggy whip syndrome. And so Elon Musk, who is now not only considering expanding X as its social media platform, but also considering buying MSNBC, which Comcast is splitting off into a different company and cutting a lot of the salaries of its staff because MSNBC is awful and no one watches it. Axios co-founder Jim Van de Hey over at the National Press Club, which is a really beautiful building. And I got to tell you, watching him on stage losing his mind because no one cares about his journalists over at Axios who consistently write garbage, unedited, nonsensical, and blatantly false headlines because Elon is now running Twitter. This is just one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Check this out.
Platforms are not regulated right now.
Let me try that again. Instead of the CNN clip, which we'll get to in a minute, here's Van de Hey.
Matters. Everything we do is under fire. Elon Musk sits on Twitter every day or X today saying like, we are the media. You are the media. My message to Elon Musk is bullshit. You're not the media. You having a blue check mark, a Twitter handle, and 300 words of cleverness doesn't make you a reporter any more than me looking at your head and seeing that you have a brain and telling you have an awesome set of tools makes me a damn neurosurgeon, right? Like what we do, what journalists do, what you did in Mississippi, what Al Jazeera does in the Middle East.
Oh.
You don't proclaim yourself to be a reporter. Like that's nonsense. Like being a reporter's hard.
LOL. First of all, being a reporter is not hard. It's not. And I say that as someone who has done quite a bit of reporting in the last couple of years. It's not. Does it take some diligence? Yes. Is it hard? No. It's not. It's writing a story and basically collecting a series of facts, maybe doing some investigative journalism. That can be a little difficult. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know the pathways to get information, especially when people don't want to give it to you. Being a reporter is not hard. It's not. I have worked with several colleagues on the right and left side of the aisle who have journalism degrees, and they are awful writers and they're awful reporters. I have worked with people on the left and the right who don't have journalism degrees, and they're phenomenal journalists. And they're far better than I could ever hope to be. And I love watching him lose his mind because people aren't reading Axios anymore. The Associated Press is basically at a point where they have to lay off and fire hundreds of staffers because no one's buying their crap anymore. Same with the Gannett newspapers. And they did it to themselves. We warned them. And by the way, those of us on the inside and kind of the tech side of things said, you kind of need to get out there and, focus more on the podcasting sphere and reach out to men as well as college-educated suburban women and all of this other nonsense that they've desperately clinged to, and they wouldn't do it. And so now they are suffering those consequences. CNN is losing it in a different way because, again, Elon Musk has suggested he might be interested in buying MSNBC, which I got to tell you, that would be absolutely hilarious just for the meme in and of itself, to watch Rachel Maddow, who looks like a young boy trying to skateboard, crying on TV, announcing that she's being fired. I cannot wait for such a day. But in the meantime, over on CNN, they have their expert media panel who doesn't even know the basic laws of the United States, freaking out upon all freakouts because Elon, I guess, is going to be allowed to maybe buy MSNBC.
Platforms are not regulated right now, which gives them carte blanche to whatever they want right now. Elon is not someone who likes to be regulated. And so to buy MSN, he would go under some federal regulations.
Who's regulating CNN right now?
Silence.
The FCC.
We're not a broadcast. It's cable.
Platforms are not regulated right now, which gives them carte blanche to whatever they want right now. Elon is not someone who likes to be regulated. And so to buy MSN, he...
By the way, if you're not watching the live stream, you're listening in on one of the radio partner stations. She's looking around, which, by the way, is one of the tells of a liar. And I point this out. I look up from time to time because that's where the show clock is above the door. So I stay within the rules for being on the air and go into commercial break. She's like looking around, like left and right as she's trying to form her points. She's just been called out. There are not a list of on-air rules and regulations for FCC. Occasionally, we're on the air on, for example, Channel 30 in Wisconsin. That is a standard on-the-air broadcast that has FCC rules you have to abide by. MSNBC is not on those rules, but anyway, she's going to continue to blubber on.
Would go under some federal regulations.
Who's regulating CNN right now?
The FCC.
We're not a broadcast. It's cable.
I mean, I don't really think cable stations are under the same regulatory structure.
It doesn't go over public airwaves.
That broadcast.
I love it.
It's definitely regulated more than than Facebook and
there's
Twitter.
Still, what she's saying is that there's still a litmus test of journalism that you have to pass. You can't come on TV and just make up things and say things. That happens on X. Please don't give me the eyebrow furrow as if you don't know what I'm talking about. It happens often on X. I can go in.
We'll come back to this clip maybe a little bit later because it's beautiful. Yeah, you can say whatever you want on cable. There's no you can go out as a forecaster, like on a cable weather station, and announce that it's going to be sunny and 127 degrees on Tuesday. No one's going to care. Making up nonsense. Scott Jennings is just a national treasure. Last, before we head over to our commercial break here, I have to show you a clip of Dr. Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, leaving Brian Cohen completely speechless because all libs did the entire Kamala Harris campaign and the Joe Biden campaign was whine about Project 2025. So Piers finally gives Brian Cohen the shot. Go ahead, here you go. Ask any question you want. And Brian is left just speechless and then also emasculated because he's a big soy drinking goober.
Yeah, let me go to a friend on the left, Brian, because you tweeted or posted to X on 25th of November about Project 2025. You got one of the architects sitting right next to me here. You said Trump just named to architect of Project 2025 Russ Vought to his cabinet. But hey, thank God mainstream media didn't just take Trump's tepid denials at face value and slap them in their headlines before the election. So look, you've got an opportunity now. You've got one of the other architects sitting right next to me. What do you want to say to him?
I mean...
Cricket. Cricket.
Now's your chance.
Cricket.
No, that's very articulate. Thank you.
A couple of minutes later, Geraldo gives him a little bit of breathing room, and he just blubbers and flunders.
Geraldo bought you about 3 minutes of time there to try and think whether you had a problem with Project 2025. So now's your chance again.
I do think it's pretty telling that when Donald Trump had the opportunity to talk about Project 2025, all he claimed was that he had no idea who was behind it. He had no idea what was in it. He had no idea whether the people who did write it, what they stood for. And
but as Kevin was saying, he was distancing himself from the
administration right now, including Russ Vought at OMB. Right. And yet now, when people don't have the opportunity to vote on it because they've already had that opportunity, suddenly all of these denials about his relationship with Project 2025.
But out of interest, what is your big problem with it?
My big problem with Project 2025 is Schedule F, and this notion that Donald Trump will be able to go in and replace career civil servants with political appointees.
Oh, no.
Okay. You sound like a sore loser, Brian.
Oh, man. The reason that the left hates Project 2025, and I want to make this explicitly clear, is because a big portion of the multi-organizational project, which is just a menu of policies, a big portion of Project 2025 lists different ways that the federal government can be reduced in size by firing career bureaucrats who you didn't elect and screw your life over consistently with bureaucratic policy. That's why they hate it. And you know what? American people, whether it's through Project 2025 or Agenda 47 or whatever, American people voted that they despise the federal government continuing to lord over their lives with regulatory policy on the economy and immigration, on crime, on trade, and you know what? New management. Up next, we're going to talk to Spencer Klavan about the Jerusalem Cross tattoo. Stick around. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Hey, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. You may have heard in the news briefly that everyone was really, really mad about Pete Hegseth, Trump's pick for the Secretary of Defense, particularly because he had a tattoo, but not just any tattoo, a specific kind of super devious tattoo. And it was in the news cycle for like 5.5 minutes, and then it ran out of steam. Spencer Klavan joins associate editor at Claremont, as well as the guy with the Young Heretics Podcast, something that when I was still in the public school system in Indianapolis, I would kind of walk through some classrooms, watching a few of the students listening to it like in secret. So that's how Spencer and I first got to know each other. Dude, thanks for hopping on.
Tony, great to see you again, and always nice to be providing contraband, intellectual contraband to the public school students of the world.
Of course, we'll link that in the description as well, because you should be enjoying the finer things. And I got to tell you, ditching the milk and sugar of kind of the cheap novels and going to the good stuff, the deep stuff. Once you read a villain who was written correctly, you will never go back. Ever. So speaking of villains who will never go back, everyone on the left did a little mini heart attack flip for a few seconds. Or I shouldn't say everyone, some of the more interesting individuals, claiming that Pete Hegseth, who had a tattoo on his chest of the Jerusalem Cross, which is a symmetrical standard kind of cross with the end tildes and then 4 smaller crosses. And they said that this was actually a secret Nazi fascist symbol. No?
In fact, incorrect. So close. It's actually not that at all. I really like this. It reminds me of that old joke. Who is this guy Rorschach, and why did he paint so many pictures of my parents fighting? Like, this is lives like everything everywhere is just like Hitler. And so, of course, this is the only thing they have. You saw it already in the lead up to the presidential election, that all of their imaginary fantasy world about, isn't it so great you get to play with your new Kamala doll? She's so brag. Mean old Biden is gone. This was like totally astroturfed, and everyone knew it. And even the people that were involved in it kind of knew it while it was going on. And they just thought, maybe we can ride this hot air balloon just over the finish line, but it started to sort of deflate, and you heard the trumpets going like womp womp. And what did they do?
And the deflation
right
sound is just like an old whoopee cushion as it's sinking. Wait, oh no, no, no.
What are we gonna do now? Quick, pull the fascist cord.
They're like bailing water out of the hot air balloon. Like, that's not how this works.
Yeah, what? Why is there? How did water get in here? It's like every possible form of failure.
This parachute is an anvil.
Yeah, wait a second. This is like Wile E. Coyote run through the
Acme campaign. That's a book right there.
There you go. Yeah, the Kamala Harris Acme campaign. Well, so then you saw them start to go to Trump really is Hitler. He's worse than Hitler. He's a fascist. And this is the sign of a media class realizing that its hold on the public imagination has completely fallen apart, deteriorated. They've lost this vice grip they used to have. And they really lost it, I think, several years ago, maybe a decade ago, but it's only now become so undeniable that it has cashed out in terms of an election result. And this is why they're so frantic. The obvious thing to do would be to sit back and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have dissolved the borders into soup, and maybe the whole trans-maximalism thing is like a bad look for us, and maybe we can like revise. I'm really looking forward to the time when they do that. But in the meantime, namely our entire lifetimes, we're going to have to watch them do the only other thing which is available to them, which is like reach for any possible sign of fascism.
It really is like the SpongeBob pulling out the box of old reliable and opening it up, and it's the same old fascist thing. And I got to tell you, I thought fairly intensely about what it was that they could possibly be looking at, because any square lines, any perpendicular lines, they immediately go, that's a swastika. And I thought, well, no, that can't be it. I think that they might be like suggesting that it vaguely looks like the Iron Cross medal given to German soldiers in World War I. I keep trying to, or like the cross of Acre, maybe. Help me out. Do you have any ideas as to where they're pulling this imagery?
Okay, so I think that's part of it, but I have a theory about this, and you tell me what you think. Okay. So, as you noted, the Jerusalem cross is a canonical Christian symbol. It really enters the historical record in 1099, I think, after the conquest of Jerusalem. But it's attested elsewhere. One cross surrounded by four smaller crosses, incredibly rich with numerical symbolism. It can stand for the four evangelists. It can stand for another sort of set of theories about the five virtues of Mary. We find this also in the Gawain poem. Like, we could do a whole episode on
whether or not it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or whether it's about Mary, or whether it's about the Christ's pillars of the church. I mean, there's a ton of different things, but it's been around for a while.
Right. It's about all of these things. And I think that the fact they seized on this actually shows you something important about what they really mean by fascism or Nazism. That in their minds, they don't have a distinction between healthy nationalism and unhealthy nationalism, between healthy Christian pride or pride in our Western heritage and
reverence,
evil, genocidal, anti-Semitic psychosis.
Because they refuse to condemn those who are actually throwing up the Nazi Aryan supremacist salute at the Palestinian, Hamas marches, whether they're in Montreal, Canada, or whether they're in Northwestern University. And again, you would think, well, if they're, actually against fascism, but they just throw this word out like it's candy at a Memorial Day parade.
Right. And because they have an operative theory of history that is inherently progressive in the original sense of that term, that everything now is better than the past, which was evil and wrong, they actually don't have a heuristic, like a way of defining good from bad national pride, good from bad Christian heritage. And so they've just lumped all of this medieval stuff, which is what the cross is, into a big bucket called symbols of ethno-narcissist paleo-fascism.
When you say
this shows up to them, reads for them that way.
So when you say an operative view of history, do you mean specifically in their view of progressivism as though like history is kind of a diagonal line upwards, And so like at the bottom in the past, you're seeing that, everyone's a bunch of knuckle dragging Neanderthal racist, like all of the phobes together in one big box. And then over time, just any kind of progress was good progressivism. Like I'm trying to like parse how you frame an entire worldview that's completely based off of idols and, not actually what history should be based off of.
Well, I think if you listen closely, so I listen to a lot of lefty podcasts. It's one of my favorite pastimes. I do it so you don't have to. And
we're the first line of defense.
Yeah, exactly. Standing stalwartly between the world and my friends. I actually really enjoy it. And I sometimes there's interesting stuff and sometimes there's really telling stuff. And one of the most telling things is the way that the word traditionally is used in sort of on the far left of the Democrat Party in this country, which has now become really the ideological center of gravity.
Almost as though it's a curse word, perhaps. Like almost as
that's
though,
right.
Yeah,
Traditionally, means like traditional masculinity, for instance, right? Masculinity has traditionally been associated with, or this country has traditionally been racist.
Right, done with a sneer. Your lips kind of go up towards your nose when you say it.
That's right. And marginal identities have traditionally not had access to this or that, and in some cases, it's true. It is the case that there have been injustices in the past. And so the word traditionally is also used as a synonym for the word historically, which equally comes with a side of sneer, with a kind of like, oh, historically, we've had injustices for the trans community or whatever. And yeah, I think you start to realize that word doesn't just mean in the past or according to our traditional way of doing things. It actually means like worse. It just means this is the bad thing that we're trying to escape from. And you almost never hear that word used in a positive sense, that historically this nation has been, unprecedented in its attribution of freedom to underserved minorities, right?
To catch the rest of this excellent interview with Spencer Klavan, you're going to need to head over to the YouTube channel at Daily Signal or on the podcast. We'll make sure that's linked below. We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So I have to show you guys a video right up here at the front, and it's a video from The View, so it's going to be fantastic.
Judge has said they are withdrawn without prejudice. What that means is you can bring them again. But the problem is, because he's the sitting president, you can't continue the prosecution, and the statute of limitations will likely run out when he's done. So he did what he wanted to do, but the last final point I'll make, I know that most people are saying, well, this was a kitchen table issue. This was about the cost of eggs. Donald Trump never talked about the cost of eggs.
Donald Trump never talked about the cost of eggs. That's an interesting claim, because we get into a point of history revisionism after the campaign season. And Kamala Harris came out this evening and gave like a really sad, depressing unity speech. We'll get to that tomorrow. Didn't have enough time to cut it because it was right before we got to the show. So I love claims like this. I love it when personalities come out and they make some kind of broad sweeping statement about something that never happened or something that definitely happened kind of thing. Okay. This is not even one that's up to interpretation. Not only did the Trump campaign run, and I have counted, over 15 different national ads that included the price of eggs in the video or the image, but Trump himself, on the second most viewed piece of content during the entire presidential campaign. So number one would be Joe Rogan's podcast, in which Trump also mentioned the price of eggs. But anywho, in the Trump versus Kamala debate, the second most watched thing, 67 million people tuned into this particular event. Trump directly, specifically mentioned the high price of eggs under the Biden-Harris administration.
We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
Eggs!
The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done.
Correct. That's correct. Yes. Absolute 157,000% survey says. Yes, indeed. Eggs are extremely expensive. They've doubled in price. Double. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say that just one more time. I want to make this extremely clear. Eggs have doubled in price. That is 100% inflation. Eggs, I don't know if you guys know this. Actually, I'm gonna make this very clear. One of my kids, we have discovered, has an anaphylactic reaction to eating eggs. And it's not just, the standard, oh, my kid was allergic to eggs when they were little, he'll grow out of it. No. Like an actual anaphylactic reaction to eggs at this present time. I hope they grow out of it at the moment. Not looking like the same thing. Do you know how many things eggs go into? A lot. Like a lot of things go into eggs. In fact, I'm going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow when I show you guys how to make the best stock and gravy for your Thanksgiving, because that's what matters to a Midwesterner. Eggs and dairy matter. And when eggs and dairy skyrocket in price, it directly affects those who make it an extremely important staple of their diet. Look, you don't like Donald Trump? Cool. That's fine. I don't care. You don't have to like Donald Trump. You don't have to be a Republican. You don't have to be a conservative. You don't have to be a libertarian. You don't have to be an independent. You want to be a lib? Totally fine. You want to be a Bernie Sanders liberal? Go right ahead. Totally fine with me. Don't lie about why you lost. Kamala Harris cackled awkwardly, tried to bribe black men by promising an unconstitutional, very illegal loan program that was extremely racially discriminatory, while simultaneously she suggested that she was just like one of you, working at McDonald's, which was a lie, that she had this amazing, rich, textured history, which was full of lies, while hiring a compulsive liar to be her VP, her running mate, and then lied to the Americans about what was done in the administration, what her own views were, why they had changed, and refused to even say that she would be anywhere near different at all, other than that she was not physically Joe Biden in her difference as her possible administration versus Joe Biden's administration. She lost for that reason. The Democrats who continue to desperately hope and pray that they can just run Kamala Harris again in 2028 after she finished $1 billion and $20 million at least in the hole. $1 billion Kamala Harris raised. This was bragged about everywhere. She outspent Trump and the RNC. And then ended up $20 million in debt because she hired famous people and celebrities to get in front of the American public at her rallies. They didn't even perform. They got up and read awkward speeches. And the teleprompter didn't even work. Cardi B had to pull out her phone and vaguely read like she was giving a middle school presentation on the layers of the Earth's crust. It was incredible. And yet apparently Kamala is telling political advisors, as according to a report over at CNN, that she's interested in running again in 2028. Yes, please run this again. And bring on the same old tired ladies at The View, to bring on the same old suburban wine mom take that you can just ignore all of the facts that people can't afford food. They're scared to go out at night because of the massive crime problem, the drug problem, and the illegal immigration problem in this country. The world is on fire. Not to mention the fact that no one can afford not just food, but also the niceties, the necessities, the replacements. Things like toiletries, things like being able to afford a home, things like expanding to perhaps a second car for your family, or even owning a car in the first place. Harris and Biden did not deliver when they promised a return to normalcy. And the left just saying, well, Trump didn't talk about eggs, even when that's the number one of the big things we talked about. I was tracking egg prices for 3 years. Matt Hiblin, the station manager over at WIBC, tasked me with covering the change in the price of eggs for the first couple of episodes of this show when it was just a Saturday show and I was covering for Abdul, who is a mayoral candidate in a primary. I was just covering for him while he was gone. And yet we're going to rewrite history in order to avoid the fact that maybe the racial and the sexist gender crap doesn't fix the economy. We'll be back tomorrow with one last episode before Thanksgiving. Thanks for tuning in. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.
Hey, it's Rob. If you want to grow your...